Thank you everyone for joining us. Like I said, we are streaming live on Facebook and other social media platforms. And I also want to say that it's a public event. It's open to the public, and do be aware that whatever comes out of this conversation can go anywhere online in the world. So thank you very much. We have a very important topic to discuss today, and we have a very formidable panel of discussants. I'll quickly do an introduction, and then I'll come back to the issue of the day, which is we are talking about perhaps one of the biggest security challenges we have today, which is the problem of banditry in our country, Nigeria. But I'd like to start by welcoming our guests, starting with Professor Usman Yusuf, our keynote speaker. Professor Usman Yusuf is a professor of hematology and oncology and bone marrow transplantation. He is the immediate past executive secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme, the NHIS. He graduated from ABU Zaria in 1982 and did his NYS in Cross River State. He's worked in several parts of the world as a medical doctor in that specialty. I sincerely welcome you to this webinar. I met Professor Yusuf about 3 weeks ago, and we got to talking about, his foray into the forest to talk to, our brothers, bandits in the forest, and, I knew that I would want him to appear at a public forum like this, and he readily accepted. Thank you very much, sir, for honoring our invitation.
Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce Senator Sheikh Hussain. I hope he's not having problems joining us. If he is, IT people, please get in contact with him and do ensure that he's able to join us as quickly as possible if he has not joined us yet. Senator Sheikh Hussain is an author, Nigerian senator from Kaduna State, a playwright, and a human rights activist. He is president of the Civil Rights Congress of Nigeria and chairman of Hand in Hand Africa, and was a leading figure in the struggle for restoration of democracy in Nigeria. And I look at his CV and his age, and I'm surprised that at such an age, Senator Sani has achieved so much in life. Gloria Thomas is a broadcast journalist with Voice of Nigeria, serving as North Central Bureau Chief, covering Benue, Nasarawa, and other states in that zone. A gender advocate with concerns for youth empowerment. She also advocates for better health for people with sickle cell disease. She has joined us, but probably will not be able to share her video. She's also a specialist in conflict resolution issues with special focus on, herder-farmer conflict in the Benue Plateau area. Professor Chidi Odinkalu is a lawyer, writer, human rights activist, and civil society leader in Nigeria. He is a former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission and is currently a visiting professor at Harvard University. Thank you very much for joining us, Prof. Martin Zonoja, a colleague and a friend, is a journalist, sorry, I wanted to call you a communist, but he's not a communist, he's a columnist. He's the managing director, editor-in-chief of the Guardian newspapers in Nigeria. Before then, he was editor of the daily title of the newspaper, and before then, he was Abuja Bureau Chief, the erudite, very cerebral Martins Onoja. Thank you very much for joining us. Now to the issue at hand. Nigeria faces is like we are at the brink of a precipice because we are contending with so many security challenges at the same time. We have had, the militancy issue in the Niger Delta. We overcame that. And so it means that there is no security challenge that we face that has not been faced by other countries before and that cannot be dealt with. And that's why it's important for us to have fora like this to talk about it. Unfortunately, until now, we've not seen many discussions around this particular security issue, the issue of banditry. We've had to deal, and we are still dealing with the Boko Haram insurgency in the in the northeast of Nigeria. We are dealing with all kinds of, kidnapping issues around the country. I remember 2 years ago when we commissioned a story, banditry had maybe not just started, was just becoming a really big issue. And we commissioned a story in the Northwest. And it started, like every security challenge, like a small joke. We thought they were just criminals who were hungry. We heard of cattle rustling and all that. But today, when I spoke to Professor Yusuf 3 weeks or so ago, the picture he painted was so concerning, distressing to me. Like we have another country, like another territory from Sokoto to Ilela to Bayelsa, which constitute ungoverned territory in this country that have been taken over by some people. And unfortunately, it appears that the Nigerian government does not know how to deal with this. As of today, there are nearly 1,000 cases of kidnapping allegedly by bandits. Specifically, there are 780 incidents involving 3,000, nearly 4,000 people. And Kaduna has the highest number of incidents at 83 such incidents involving nearly 800 people. And so what has government done? For several weeks now, private citizens have stepped in because it appeared that government didn't know what to do about it. And so it took the likes of Sheikh, Abubakar Gumi, Professor Yusuf, to take the gauntlet and go into the forest to start to listen to these bandits. Why are they on the rampage in our country? And so I believe that it is terribly important that we have this discussion. Fortunately, I know that today also Osiwa, Open Society Foundation of Nigeria, and some other organizations are also dealing with this security issue in Nigeria, and the banditry problem is one of the things they'll be discussing. So I'm happy that eventually we are all realizing that perhaps this is beyond government and we all have to come in and deal with this problem together. So I welcome all of you, particularly our guests, who will be dissecting this issue, starting with Professor Usman Yusuf, who has, for the last month or two or so, been speaking, listening, interacting with the bandits all over the place in several states, and I will allow him to talk. So I'd like to welcome Professor Yusuf. Briefly, the way this works, the way we have structured this is Sorry, let me quickly do what I ought to have done at the beginning. For those who do not know, the International Center for Investigative Reporting is a non-profit news organization. Our main focus of our work is we develop capacity for other newsrooms to be able to do critical reporting that we do. We have our news website, which focuses mainly on investigative reports at www.icirnigeria.org. Thank you very much. So the way it goes is we allow professor to speak for 20, 30 minutes, and then each panelist can engage with issues arising from his paper. The panelists can also put up their positions, or if they have questions, they can also ask. Each panelist will have because we have just about 1.5 hours for all this. It's an important topic, and so if we all do decide that it's important that we continue to talk about it, so be it. Each panelist will have about 7 minutes to speak, and then we'll come back with the questions from the panelists to Professor Yusuf. He will answer, and then we will also allow Nigerians and other members of the public to also ask their questions. The editor of the ICIR, Ajibola Amzat, will help me in throwing the questions at Professor Yusuf and the panelists. Thank you very much. So I'd like to welcome at this time Professor Usman Yusuf, the immediate past Executive Secretary of the NHIS, to speak to us on this issue. Thank you very much.
Daya, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for being here. I really am very glad that we are talking instead of fighting and cursing each other, because this is what's been going around the country. So why did I get involved in this matter? Because it's all ours. Bandits are ours. Boko Haram, they're ours. IPOC, they're ours. All of this non-state actors, they are ours. So unless we come into this space, they will occupy this space and we'll find nowhere to go. So that's why when Dio invited me, I gladly accepted. And I've said, and I will say it again, I stuck my neck out, that banditry in northern Nigeria is essentially a social problem and not a military problem. So what I'm going to talk about, just a little introduction, give some historical perspective, and give Zamfara State as a case study, and then bring out, just to preempt discussions and questions coming, to dialogue or not to dialogue, and then talk about Sheikh Gumi's initiatives, its successes and challenges, and then grievances of the bandits that we had when we visited. And then what was the take-home message for me? And then I took the liberty of comparing and contrasting Boko Haram and banditry, and then suggested ways forward, short, medium, and long term. And then I had a very practical suggestion from a repentant bandit I met in Zamfara. And I'll share that with everybody. So introduction, we all know, and I've said it before, insecurity is a symptom of corruption and bad governance. End of story. And we will go nowhere if we will keep going round and round if we don't take care of these two problems. We are increasingly militarizing what is essentially a social problem. We do not know the enemy we're fighting. And this is no secret. There's been lack of synergy and tough wars between our security agencies. And the governors do not have a unified approach to handling this problem. And there is absence of communication and involvement of stakeholders. Gandhi said, whatever you do for me, without me, it's against me. So security is not only for the military, every stakeholder must come in. That's why we're here today. And I emphasize that all problems are local and their solutions are also local. There is a crucial role for the military, but there is no military solution to this conflict. Dialogue, in my opinion, is a very important and more enduring pathway to peace. Historical perspective. Those of us that are from this part of the country know that banditry we see today is the injustices of the past that is catching up with us. We know the injustices that have been done to Fulanis over generations, long before we were born. They've never seen anything government. They are one people that do not own land in this country. Their cattle rustle, and there is injustices locally, usually by local authorities, local judges, local police, and local policemen. They would sell their cattle, and so all these injustices are catching up with us. And then it came to cattle rustling. And then these kids that grow up now grow up without cattle. All they have known all their lives is herding cattle. The cattle are gone now. And then a bandit told me that all these things started around 19, because you ask yourself, I keep asking myself questions. Why do we have all this insecurity and banditry from 1999 till date? Does it have anything to do with the politics, the way we've been practicing our politics? I was asking. And he said, Augusta, it started around 1999 to the year 2000, this kidnapping in Kogi State. What happens is that many of these young herders, they are told by their parents to take the cattle down south for pasture. And they spend months and they come back up north during the rainy season. So he was telling me they are in the forest around the Kogi area. Then kidnappers from Edo would bring in their abductees into the forest for these Fulani young men to hold for them. And then once they get the money, ransom money, they come and give it to them and they take the abductees back. So they realize there is money to be made in this criminality. And then they started doing that. They started getting involved in drugs. They started getting involved in alcohol. And when they come back, they keep teaching those that did not go. It started with what they call kwanta. They block the road and get people out, and they lay down and rob them. They got money, which they invested in buying arms, and then it morphed into the banditry we see today. So I took Zamfara as a case study because banditry in northern Nigeria, Zamfara is the epicenter. I kept asking myself why. Zamfara for me is near and dear because that was where I spent my formative secondary school years. When I was there, 72 to 76, it was wonderful. What happened in Zamfara? And it's been very well studied by a professor at Ahmadu Bello University, Professor Sadiq. He spent years in these villages studying banditry. His paper was wonderful. If you want to know anything about banditry in the north, you must refer to that paper. So in his paper, and I'll quote some of his, all the work from Zamfara is his papers. It started as a farmers-herders conflict that degenerated into armed robbery, mostly by Fulani youths. There are lots of places in these rural areas in Zamfara that were ungoverned, no presence of states at all. And for a very long time, these communities were run by traditional leaders, the clerics, and teachers dealing with this crisis. When the armed robberies persisted, people formed vigilantes, and they started going after these Fulani youth, killing them. Most of these vigilantes overstepped their boundaries. In fact, they even chased and pursued these Fulani youths into the forest, and they were merciless and killed a lot of innocent people. This degenerated and escalated, and it became like an ethnic war. Like pastoralists that were innocent are now saying the Hausa communities were killing them. So what did they do? They retreated back to the forest and then recruited the youth. If you have a child who can fight, they will conscript the child. If you don't, you pay. You sell your cattle and pay to help the cause. Because what they thought at that time was they were emancipating the Fulanis from genocide by the Hausas locally. That's how it started. Then it degenerated into an escalating tit-for-tat reprisal killers. So these Fulanis, they are rugged. They know the forest. And they kept on doing these criminalities to gather money to buy arms. And that was how it escalated. And I will tell you about our visit to Zamfara. So what we are seeing today is clearly nothing but an absence of governance in the state over the years. This has been going on for several years in Zamfara. Nothing happened. Escalated from this little robberies to banditry to killings, and now they're fully armed. They are warlords. We saw them, very scary. So what we are seeing today is the result of absence of governance in the state over a very long time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my fear. My fear is what is happening now in the south, in southern Nigeria, between locals and herders, is reminiscent of what happened in Zamfara before full-blown banditry. When these Fulani kids had problems with locals, they were killing each other, they would retreat to the forest, get armed, because there's no real banditry in the south. What you see is farmers, herders clash. Banditry in the north is scary. We've seen bandits. They ride into villages in hundreds of motorcycles, heavily armed, drugged, and they do their operation, kill people, rape women, kill cattle, rustle cattle, steal everything, and leave for hours. And this is the nightmare we have been living through. In my state, 12, 13 out of the 34 local governments have been under siege by this bandit. Zamfara state is devastated. Sokoto state, we went the same thing. Now Kaduna state and Niger state are becoming epicenters for these bandits. So we need to be very, very careful. We are now learning, when we came in, we are trying to learn lessons from what happened in Boko Haram in the Northeast. That government neglected what essentially was a little problem that became big. Now the genie is out of the box banditry here in the Northwest, North Central, and we're having problems in the Southwest. So the Southwest and the Southeast elders need to step in and make sure this thing does not escalate into full-blown banditry in that part of the country. This is my fear. No one would wish for anyone what we are seeing in this part of the country. So I ask a question, to dialogue or not to dialogue? Dialogue is a legitimate tool used in all conflicts. It is used usually before the conflicts, during the conflicts, and after the conflicts, hostilities start. It saves lives, properties, and is more enduring than war. Remember, our former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, initiated dialogue with Boko Haram. And I'm glad distinguished Senator Sheikh Hussain is here with us, because he was with him when they went to see Boko Haram. He wasn't sent by the government. He went as an elder statesman to see what he could do. And he tried his best. And he told us when we visited him. And also, let's not forget, in 2013, former President Goodluck Jonathan also set up a committee, the Turaki-led committee, for dialogue with Boko Haram. They spent time, they visited prisons, they went there all over the country. They dialogued with them and submitted their report to the president. And let's not forget, ANC in South Africa, Frelimo in Mozambique, SWAPO in Namibia, America, the vaunted American army is negotiating with Taliban for the past several years in Qatar. The IRA, I remember when I was in the UK, Thatcher was saying, no negotiation with criminals, with terrorists. But in the end, what brought peace was dialogue and negotiation between the IRA and the United Kingdom. And FARC rebels in Colombia was negotiation. And more often than not, in all of this, it is clerics that blaze a path to go and see the warring factions and combatants. So dialogue for any governor is the only tool he has. Yes, admittedly, many of the dialogues that all the governors in the north, including Boko Haram, that they had, they failed. But that's no reason not to continue. If anything is the reason that will spur you to make sure you continue to do it. And I saw when I went with Sheikh Gumi, how they listen to clerics. And I see a window of hope. And we shouldn't close. So governors and the federal government should not close the door for dialogue. Dialogue is different from amnesty, is different from negotiating. Dialogue does a lot of things. And we have seen in Zamfara, we were in Zamfara, and I'll tell you about it. We were in Zamfara for a week with Sheikh Gumi, and we saw the benefits of dialogue. In 2019, when this government came in, the government in Zamfara state came in, Gusau, the state capital, was in curfew. 6 p.m., everybody was home. All the major highways in Zamfara state, by 6 p.m., they were empty. We went to Shinkafi, and the chairman of the local government, and I was very impressed, because I've always said there is not a governor in this country that will tell you the number of people killed, villages razed, ransom paid, and all these statistics. No governor can give you an accurate one, but I was very impressed in Shinkafi when we went. The chairman of the local government there gave us statistics of how many women were widowed, how many children were orphaned, how much was paid in ransom to these people over a period of time. And over a period of time, he would tell us 200 killed, 100 killed, 300 killed, 50 killed around that place. So the governor had no option, because what is in the hands of the governor is not the military. He does not even control the police that guard his house. What is in his hand is the negotiating and dialoguing and see how he will bring peace to his people. So in Zamfara state, they dialogue. And by the time we got there, Gusau, the capital city, was open till midnight. We were there. There was one time in Gusau where there would be fura, which is made usually by the local women, but there was no, because no is brought by Fulani females into the towns. Fura, no, you can't drink fura. All the major highways, we were leaving the forest around 9, 10 p.m., traversing these highways in Zamfara, and they were free and empty. And he gave us statistics of over a period of 8, 9 months, there has not been any fatality around Shinkafi. That is not in any way minimizing the fact that there are still a lot of banditry in the villages and killings. But one less life killed is a life worth saving. So we saw the benefit of dialoguing. So Sheikh Gumi's initiative. Why did Sheikh Gumi, I and Sheikh Gumi go back a long way. We were in medical school together from 1976, so 45 years ago. And I know personally how much he cares for this country and how deeply pained we all are. And that's why we're here today, about the state of insecurity in this country. So over the years, in the mosque he preaches, Sultan Bello Mosque, the central mosque in Kaduna, he would preach and say, all clerics need to go to the villages, go to our folks in the forest and preach the word of God to them. Then he said, I cannot sit down and be preaching without practicing what I preach. Then he went. He wasn't sent there by any government or any person. He wasn't there at the behest of anybody. He wasn't sponsored by anybody. He did not go there to negotiate. He did not go there to advocate for anything. What did Sheikh Gumi go to do? Sheikh Gumi went to listen to both sides. Martin Luther King Jr. said, violence is the language of the unheard. And when I came back, I saw the wisdom of these words. We do not know the enemy we're fighting. So he went there to listen. He wanted to understand the grievances of all sides. And he wanted to, by his dialogue and meeting them, to have a channel of confidence building. Open a channel, line of communication to bridge the gap between these bandits, the communities, and the government. He wasn't there to negotiate on anybody's behalf. He was an advocate for peace, not for any one group of persons. But most importantly, he went there to preach the word of God to them. His goal, and our goal all was reconciliation between these Fulanis, local communities and the government, and finally achieving a lasting peace in our region. So let me quickly tell you the states we visited. I did not follow him to Kaduna. He went to 4 settlements in Kaduna, around Kidanda, around Binnungwari, I wasn't there. And then we went to Zamfara. He invited me to Zamfara. Then we went to Sokoto, Kebbi, and then Niger. So, and each of these states were different. So in Kaduna, when he went, he visited the settlements, the rugas of this Fulani, and preached to them, and given them literatures of Islam, and preaching to them basic things, because there is no scripture that will accept or preaches what they are doing. If anyone has any religion in his heart, he won't do what he's doing. So his purpose was to go there and see how he could touch their heart with the words of God. So in Kaduna, he visited this settlement. They are mostly regular Fulanis. And then when he was going to Zamfara, he invited me. Zamfara was a totally different ball game. When he goes, when we're there with him, he would see the emir of each of the towns we went to. We went to Gusau, we went to Gumi, we went to Anka, we went to Maradu, we went to all these places. We'll visit the emir. Then he will come back. He will go to the local government, meet with them. He will meet village elders. He will meet the Arbos. Arbos are Fulani leaders. And then he will meet town folks before we go into the forest. So people are asking me, oh, Sheikh Gumi knows where these folks live. No, we don't. All of these visits were facilitated by Fulani leaders from as far away as Bauchi, Nasarawa, Oyo State, to convince them to see us. So in Zamfara, we went to 2 major camps, Halilu's camp and Kachala Turuji's camp. Well, the first time I went to this camp, it was scary. I mean, kids in military uniform, the first camp. They were scattered strategically, some on top of a hill. You see 10 there, 20 there, 30 there. You had this feeling that you are in very hostile territory. There was tension. He would sit down, hear them out. Before the beginning, there will be recitation of the Quran and prayers, and then he will listen to them. They will regurgitate all of their grievances. And then he will stand up and preach to them. The first thing he will say, you are Fulanis, we are Fulanis. We are not going to deny that. You are our flesh and blood. Because all this conspiracy, oh, they are not from here, they are not from here. If we keep latching onto this conspiracy, we will never settle to do the right thing. They are ours. They are our children that have lost their ways. They are our flesh and blood. We are not proud of you. We are ashamed of you. There's nowhere in our scripture that preaches or accepts what you're doing. And you must change your ways. Whatever it is, let us hear what your complaints are and go and meet the government. Yes, there have been past injustices in the past. Yes, they were injustices, they are facts, but there are no excuses for what you're doing now. Fulani kids on drugs, Fulani kids raping women, banditry, this is unheard of. This is not us. And you could see that his preaching was getting to them. And when we come back, we go to the local government, the emir, and sit with the governor too. But the scariest one we went to in Zamfara was Kachala Turji. It's called Enshabokwe. The average age of 17. You see 13, 14, 15-year-old child soldiers smoking marijuana, carrying big guns they can hardly lift. We met them battalion size. Battalion is 1,000. Surrounding us, all in uniforms, semicircle. I mean, it's scary, but I honestly was not scared because we went to them in peace and they appreciated that. He listened to them. And we went with the DPO. We went with the chairman of the local government of Zamfara. Remember, they have been dialoguing with them for many years. So the presence of the Sheikh only gave them a boost for them to have some moral authority to speak with them. And I'll tell you an example. Kachala Turji, the leader of the gang, said, okay, Sheikh is here. They have given us 10 conditions. How many of these 10 conditions have they fulfilled? Have we fulfilled? As the chairman said all. And he said, you, the chairman, Sheikh is here. We gave you 10. How many have you fulfilled? The chairman said, only 1. And Kachala Turji said, yeah, the only thing they have fulfilled was borehole for ourselves and our family and our cattle. And even the water is gone now. So these are very simple things. So he looked at the chairman and said, we have to do better. And then Kachala, the head of the bandits, said, they don't allow us go into the village of Shinkavi and our women to go and sell milk. So the Sheikh looked at the chairman and said, why? He said, we gave them conditions that you do not go into our village armed, and whatever you buy in our markets, you must pay. And the Sheikh looked at the leader of the bandit and says, so what's wrong with this? This is what your forebears have been doing. This is what you've been doing. What has changed? And this is what you must do. So his dialogue is opening channels of communication, talking to people they trust. Well, from Sokoto, from Gusau, we went and sat down with the governor. The governor has been involved in this dialogue for a very long time. And we told him, and he would tell us, none of the governors we went to Zamfara, Kebbi, Sokoto, Niger, none of the governors would lie to us. They were honest with us and said, this we can do, this we cannot do. And would communicate same. But there is now a channel of communication. So we went to, after Zamfara, we went to Sokoto. Sokoto, we saw the governor, we saw the sultan to brief them. And then we went to Wurno, we went to Sabon Birni. Sabon Birni is a town at the border of Niger. That was terrible because the bandits there are not the local Fulanis, but they are Tuaregs from Niger coming in to cause a lot of damage and havoc to our people there. And then we were in Sokoto when the Sheikh had that there is ethnic cleansing and profiling of Fulanis in Zuru in Kebbi State. Now, fortunately, he knows the Emir of Zuru, His Royal Highness Sani. He was a general. He was his commanding officer when he was in the military at the Nigeria Army School of Infantry in Jaji. So he asked for his number and he called him. Says, sir, I want to come and see you in Zuru. He says, what is the problem? And he told him, he asked him to come tomorrow. And we all went to Zuru and he received us like he would his children in the palace. All his village heads were there. All the Islamic leaders, clerics were there. All the Fulani leaders were there. Security agents were there. Town folks were there. And the Sheikh told him why he came. He had this of profiling Fulani and Fulani killing Dakarkari. And when did we get to this level? He's here for peace. So the Emir of Zurus admitted, yeah, things like that happened before they realized. But now that all the elders have realized, things have stopped. Everybody is now hands on deck to stop this carnage. And there is peace, much, much better than before. And they all agree that we have to continue to bring peace. Nobody will bring that for us. Not from Abuja, nowhere. It is local. Because I've always said, problems are local, solutions are local. So we came back. We've been to Kaduna, Zamfara, Sokoto, Kebbi. We went to Niger. Niger was something else. There is a big bandit there. They say if you get him, Kaduna will be quiet, Niger will be quiet. Nobody has seen him. So they arranged a meeting for us. And when we went into Kaduna, and when we went into Niger, that same day, that was the day they abducted these Kagara kids. We went into the forest, we slept the night from Mina to Kontagora. From Kontagora, it was a 5-hour drive into the forest. And they told us they were tracking us from Kontagora into the forest, deep into the forest. The meeting in Niger was a meeting of war commanders from, they call them Kachallas. War commanders from Niger, from Kaduna, from Zamfara, from Kebbi, from Katsina, from Sokoto. They all gathered. Many of them were riding on their motorcycle for 7-8 hours in the forest to assemble in that place, just to meet the Sheikh. And wherever we went, they said they would not have gathered if it wasn't a cleric. They'd never seen the Sheikh, they'd never had his sermon, but they had no grouse, no quarrel with clerics. If it was a politician or any government official, they would not have gathered. And God, they gathered in force. So they all gathered. As usual, he would let everybody talk. So Dogo Ide is the guy, the big guy that assembled. He would allow everybody to speak. And at the end of it, it was decided that we would go under another tree, all the 8 commanders, I call them GOCs, and us, Sheikh Gumi's team, to discuss things we cannot talk in the public when the others are there. But you could see these guys are in a state of readiness, they are in a state of war, that they would not let their principles out of sight. You could see them. So we gathered on that tree, and the first thing the Sheikh asked them is, before I go back to my accommodation in Mina today, I want you to, and they were abducted. There were women that were abducted 2-3 weeks before. They had gone to a wedding. And then these children that were abducted today. That's the only way you could show us sign of goodwill. In a time of war, you do not touch women and children. The place was quiet. So the leader said, yeah, Sheikh, if I promise that we are going to get this 2 group of people released before you arrive Mina, I'll be lying, because I do not know the ones that abducted these children today. The ones that abducted these women, they've taken them deep into the forest, and I've been going there severally knowing you would come, just for goodwill. Sheikh said, these children and these women need to be released unharmed, and as soon as possible. And he gave us his word. The point I'm making is that those that abducted those children on the day the Sheikh came into town, were those even amongst them that were not happy with the dialogue, that were not happy with our coming to make peace. And this is the same thing of those that abducted those children in Zamfara, Jangavi. They were a splinter group that are not happy with the dialogue. So people that are unhappy with dialogue are many, but that should not deter those that really want peace. So, absolutely. And then we came back, the next day we went and briefed the governor, wonderful. The governor knew everything, because in Niger State, it is a state of war between vigilantes and these bandits. They are killing each other. In all the places we went to, I did not hear a single grouse against the federal government. Their problems and grouses are local, not from the federal government. So after we came back all these 5 states, we sat down and said, what have been the successes and the challenges of the Sheikh's initiative so far?
Hello,
the honest truth is that, yeah?
Yes, please, can you round off in a few minutes? We have a lot
yes.
to do. Thank you, sir.
Yes. So what are the grievances of these bandits? So I know people would ask. They are saying stop killing their people by vigilantes and security agents. Authorities turn their blind eye when theirs are killed. They are being profiled. Government is not keeping its part of negotiations they do with them. This is from them. They are not allowed to go into towns and villages, and their access to markets to sell their cattle and milk is restricted. Repentant bandits, they say, are left with nothing to do in towns. And a lot of innocent Fulani youths languish in jail. Some repentant bandits are arrested and killed by security agents. Well, so let me quickly, the way forward, short term. I say 4 C's. First of all, communication. We must open the channel of communication. We do not know who we are fighting. They do not know us. That's the first C. Second C is confidence building. There's so much mistrust amongst all parties. And the Sheikh was there trying to build trust. Yes, trust the government, trust me. I will be the person in the middle between all parties. And there has to be a ceasefire, mutually agreed ceasefire by all sides. And then cessation of hostility. So communication, confidence building, ceasefire, cessation of hostilities. Not short term. Medium term, there has to be reconciliation, genuine reconciliation and forgiveness nationwide between all communities. All communities. We have to find a way to pay reparation to all parties, all aggrieved parties. And there has to be rehabilitation of communities and victims. And then disarmament by both bandits and vigilantes. Long term, there has to be an opportunity to reinvent the issue of cattle routes nationwide. Yobe State has been doing that now. They are reclaiming cattle routes because what happened, there were cattle routes that are not taken over by people. So when Fulanis come with their cattle, they eat from the farms, and then there's problem. There has to be a comprehensive survey of all cattle routes in northern Nigeria. And we must create new routes where it is no longer possible to recreate the old ones. This north-south migration may have to be reconsidered. There may need to be a northeast migration routes to reduce conflict in all the places. We have to establish a way for these Fulanis to be getting good value for their money. Practical steps. And nobody is denying these bandits are bandits. They are criminals. They have caused and are still causing a lot of damage to our people. But unless we sit down and find a way forward, there's just no way we can continue this bloodshed because we do not have enough army, we do not have enough policemen, and people are continuing to be killed. The nation is awash with conflicts all over the country. So there is a repentant bandit I met in Gusau that gave me the practical. I say, today, if you're the president of Nigeria, give me practical ways to stop this banditry. Number one, he said, revoke all allocation of government land on cattle routes from 1999, because this thing started from 1999. They said they need to have equity and justice from the police, courts, and traditional rulers locally. They need to have freedom of movement and enter or settle anywhere in the country like every other citizen. There has to be provision of other amenities like mobile clinics, schools, and boreholes. And he suggested that all Fulani cattle herders should be registered. And he's saying there should be demand for all the cattle rustle between them because they kill themselves, they rustle cattle. And he says, for a period of time, close all cattle markets so that you can identify real cattle that are not stolen and register all cattle were herded. He said, I said, okay, how do you compensate Fulanis that have lost cattle? He says, it's simple. If I've lost 5, the government can give me 3. But then finally he says that we need to create community committees that would liaise with authorities. Essentially, banditry is a social problem that we need to listen and understand and find a way out. It's not a military problem. There is a role for the military, but there is no military solution. I thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Prof has articulated exactly what we talked about a few weeks when I met him, and I was scared before I left him. We gave Professor Yusuf only 30 minutes to speak, but sincerely, he could speak on this for the next 6 hours. And I saw that he was, speaking about issues that are terribly important in our national security, and that's why I allowed him to go on and on. And he has talked about so many things, including the fact that the problem at hand cannot be solved by military solution. and he talked about, the way forward, a number of things these people feel aggrieved and so on. I don't want to rehash all that he said, but because of time, I'd like to go straight and invite Senator Sheikh Hussain, and now that we're even more pressed for time, I would appeal that you spend just about 7.5 minutes or 5 or less to articulate your views on the issue of banditry. You can look at some of the issues or points raised by Professor Yusuf, and you can also ask questions or engage with any of the points he raised. I would so like to invite Senator Sheikh Hussain to take the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me on this platform. First and foremost, I am one of those who appreciate and commend the courage of Sheikh Gumi and Professor for their efforts in terms of going through such pains and hardship in trying to make their own personal contribution towards bringing an end to this banditry and violence in northwestern and north central part of Nigeria. Well, first and foremost, we must accept the fact that the banditry in the northwest is as a result of a number of factors. Some are economic and some are political. But I believe that the criminal aspect of these bandits, these Fulani bandits in the northwest, is one that should be condemned and opposed by all. We all have grievances, but it is not an excuse for anyone to pick up arms, kidnap people, and extort ransom from individuals, and particularly even poor people who are also victims of the system, and they are also oppressed. But having said that, without the inroad team, we couldn't have been able to win the enemies we are fighting, or even the people who have taken up arms against the state. So I believe that in as much as this problem has local grievances, it is incumbent on governors in the north to come together and see this as a serious problem that can undermine and destroy whatever effort in any field they are investing in. Because a situation where you have some governors believing that this is a channel they should explore and to bring about an end to this violence, and some thinking that it's not something which they should associate with, then you can't have solution to the problem. If you solve the problem in Zamfara and Niger, and the problem is not solved in Kaduna and Sokoto State, the problem will never be solved at all. So northern governors have an immediate responsibility to sit down and see the possibility of all this effort being invested by Gumi and his team to look at ways to which this problem can be addressed. Where you have local grievances and issues being raised, such issues will be addressed. But it is also a national problem in the sense that bandits are also headsmen. And we can see how their activities is not only causing problems in the north, but is threatening the unity and corporate existence of Nigeria as a country. And as someone who has once intervened in the past in initiating a process of dialogue with the group, the Boko Haram group in northeastern part of Nigeria, I believe this is a path we can use. You can't even fight people if you don't know who they are, you don't know how they operate, and you don't know the number of those people you're going to fight. So even for the sake of, if you believe even that you should crush them militarily, you can still not do it without using some of them. And the process of engagement is also key to it. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe that the positive aspect of this intervention is giving us, giving the nation, giving the government, and giving policymakers an idea of who these people are and what are they actually fighting for and how they can be tackled. And the next thing we need to understand is that the economic aspect of it actually needs to be addressed. There's so much poverty in the North. There is so much neglect by successive governments in the North. And this has created a situation where individuals can pick up arms and go against the state, and at the same time also go against innocent people in the country. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe that for those who believe that force should be used to cross these bandits, should also know it very well that this has been tried for many years. For almost 1 decade now, we have been fighting this battle and unable to bring an end to this violence. So this path which Gumi and his team has started is something which northern governors particularly should explore and see how the important ingredients of it can be used to bring an end to this violence. I have seen how they have gone around the states. It's not that very easy. No governor, no individual can sacrifice his life, his family. He has the alternative of sitting down at home and doing nothing and simply talking or commenting on issues, to move into the forest and sit down with these people who don't find it any difficult to even kill their parents. Anyone who has sacrificed to do such kind of thing, if you cannot commend him and appreciate what he is doing, you can't simply condemn him. So to me, I believe the carrot and stick approach is very important. And this carrot approach, which Gumi has started, should be used very well by both the state and the federal government to see how this can bring to an end. And the last thing I will say is that there is the need to amend the Nomadic Education Act to include development there, where such an agency of government can have the responsibility of addressing some of these local grievances of these nomads who are the same bandits, who are also the same headsmen, at least for once and for all. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Senator. So it appears that he's on the same page with Professor Yusuf. Dialogue is the road to go. Force will not solve this. And he also agrees that communication needs to be strengthened and that the governors need to do more, come together to, formulate a common agenda in dealing with. Thank you very much. Let me invite Professor Chidi Odinkalu. I don't see him. Is Professor Chidi Odinkalu with us?
I have not gone to heaven yet, sir.
Prof, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. And so I'll just, because of shortness of time, I will just go straight to you for your intervention. Thank you so much. You have the floor.
Well, thanks a lot. And can I also thank Professor Yusuf and my brother and comrade, Senator Sheikh Sani, for this conversation and for the work that they've done and for their belief in the things that are right in the country. I think there are issues on which we can agree. And let me also thank my brother, Martin Soloja, for joining in this particular conversation. I think there are things we can agree on. That there is no military solution to this. I think everyone should be able to agree on that. That there is a governance crisis. I think we should all be able to agree on that. And I think those define this question. How we proceed from those, I think legitimate disagreements can exist on. And I think there are some that I would want to raise, at least some questions I would want to raise on some of what we've heard. But to do that, I think it's important to step back. I do hear Professor Yusuf's diagnostic, but I think it's important that we also address the narrative question. He talks about the sense of grievance of the Fulanis in Nigeria, and how they've been oppressed for a time, and how this where we are is a result of that. He speaks about the origins in 1999. Some of that can be contested. First of all, nobody has a monopoly of grievance in Nigeria. And in fact, several other Nigerians could possibly argue that Fulanis have dominated the country. And that this is an uncomfortable conversation, but I do think Nigerians must have the conversation about grievance and domination and hegemony. And if everyone who has a grievance resorts to shooting, there is just not going to be enough people to be destroyed in the country. The Yorubas will bring their own, and the Anagota will bring their own, and the Igbos will come with their own, and the Efik will come with their own. There are 379 to 383 ethnic groups in Nigeria, over 500 ethnic and national groups in Nigeria, everyone with their sense of grievance. The Fulanis have no monopoly of grievance, nor of capacity to shoot their way into grievance or out of it. I think that needs to be made very clear. The second point is that on this question of grievance and narratives, this did not start in 1999. And the idea that somehow it is the kidnappers from Edo State who taught the Fulani transhuman pastoralists how to use drugs is a story for the Marines. There were drugs in Kano and in Fulani settlements way before the Edo, before Lawrence Anini. That's one. Secondly, in 1986, the 1987 Kafanchan crisis was a crisis of banditry. And it was a crisis of banditry over artisanal mining in Kafanchan, in Bajuland. And people brought in guns from all over West Africa and beyond. There were guns from Sudan. Go and read the history. President Babangida in 1986 tried to chase them out of the country. He tried to repatriate all of those people. The guns they left were the guns that caused the Kafanchan crisis that were used in Kafanchan in 1987. Since then, guns have been around in crisis all over northern Nigeria. And by the time you end up with the Obasanjo administration, President Obasanjo actually asked General Luka Yusuf, who himself was from southern Kaduna, he died in 2009, to investigate gun running in Nobody has seen that report, but there are only a few people who have seen the report of General Yusuf's investigation into gun running in Nigeria. You've got to read it to understand where this story starts, but not 1999 at all. Why? The reason I tell this story is we need to understand the narratives we're dealing with to understand our diagnostics. And so that anybody who seeks to monopolize narratives of victimization needs to also understand the history of victimization in Nigeria and the histories of gun running and some of these issues in the country. Now, two more things. You see, nobody, by the way, a third thing I think we can agree on is that dialogue is needed. But no of dialogue. How many times in the past did government dialogue with the Shiites? Over 1,000 Shiites were shot and their bodies buried in mass graves. Nobody has ever suggested dialogue with the Shiites. Sheikh Zakzaki's sons, 6 of them, massacred between 2014 and 2015. Nobody has ever suggested dialogue with them. IPOB, how many people have suggested dialogue with IPOB? No, how many people did IPOB kill? Nobody has said go and dialogue with IPOB. No, IPOB was a terrorist before anybody even said anything. And crocodiles have been dancing in the Southeast for God knows how long. That is legitimate. But when it comes to Fulanis, and I'm reflecting a perception here, which is why I think this conversation is necessary. It comes to Fulanis and the Northwest, we must do dialogue. Now, if we're going to do dialogue, can we dialogue with everybody in Nigeria and understand that all of our challenges have to be addressed that way, and not just suggest dialogue for some people and shoot others before we even understand what their issues are. So we cannot take dialogue off the table with some people and suggest dialogue is good for some other people, particularly when some of those people are levying arms against Nigeria. One more thing. Where does dialogue end and advocacy for terror begin? Because some of the stuff that Sheikh Gumi has been quoted as saying is not dialogue. Oh, you know, how many people have these people killed? They don't kill anybody. You know, it is, I think some of that verges on advocacy for terror, respect. And I ask the question in good conscience, is he advocating dialogue or is he advocating terror? And I'd like to have an answer or a response to that. And to the extent that he's seeking dialogue, can he not gratuitously, with some of his utterances, seek to injure the feelings of families who have lost people in this crisis, while we are seeking genuine solutions to what is happening? And finally, on the issues suggested, communications, confidence building, ceasefire, and cessation of hostilities all make sense. But does that not require that we formally acknowledge that we are a Geneva Convention situation and therefore declare all of these parties belligerents? So whoever these so-called bandits are should be declared as belligerents and recognized as such, so that we can then apply some of the ground rules of humanitarian law to addressing them, while we also recognize that our politicians by themselves, by the way, are the number one bandits. If we recognize that we have a governance and political leadership problem, then the biggest bandits in this business are our politicians. And the ultimate question is, how do we remove bandits from government houses? Thank you. And parliaments, of course.
Thank you very much, Professor. Expectedly, very spirited conversation there. Well,
yes. Will I respond?
We'll come back to you, Prof, but we want all the panelists to speak, right. And you can respond. Let's go to Martin's Oloja. I call him the Dean, but I won't tell anyone why I call him the Dean, because he was our leader before he went to Lagos to join the big boys. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Oloja. So you have the floor. Maybe you can speak to all this from the perspective of a media professional. You have the floor. Thank you, Martins.
Okay, thank you very much, Dayo. You know, it's a very interesting conversation. I want to thank Professor Yusuf, my brother again, Senator Sheikh Sani, and Professor Odinkalu. And I want to thank Professor Odinkalu for the job his group has done on mass atrocities casualties tracking, and that they have saved a date for National Day of Mourning for May 28, 2021. That's a good job, which I would like Evo Dayo to study very well. Mass atrocities casualties tracking. They've done a good job. And it is from there I got the context of hemispherization of this context that we are talking about. You know, Professor Yusuf was talking about the fact that the real banditry is in the north, that what we have in the south is not banditry really. But when they discussed this thing, Professor Odinkalu was talking about hemispherization, the thing is spreading all over the hemispheres that we have in Nigeria. But you know, the three previous speakers appear to have stolen the thunder from this discussion. And we just approach this thing from what others have said. I will ask some questions. You know, Professor Yusuf talked about injustice. But you know, where I would like to conclude this is what every speaker has mentioned, that we need to deepen our understanding of this intervention by Sheikh Gumi. We need to deepen our understanding about this ancient grudge that is spreading this way. Why do I say this? Here in the South, here in Lagos, here in southern Nigeria, not many people understand. You know, just by luck, we were able to talk about dialogue and advocacy. Now, by Professor Odinkalu, he tried to contextualize that, because we need to understand what this injustice is all about. In his own, in the next intervention, Professor Yusuf should talk about it, because we have also read from history that is not so long that even the Hausa people in the north were conquered. They cannot talk. They are nobody is interviewing them. We just published an interview by granted to the Guardian by a professor of archaeology in ABU, and he talked about so many of these things like this. What of injustice to the Hausa people? We need to deepen our understanding that of all the emirates in the north now, how many of these emirs are of Hausa origin? We are beginning to read that history, how the Fulani people also conquered the Hausa in the past, seized their own traditional cultures, and took their language and gave them religion. So we are beginning to see that now. The Hausa people are silent. They are also silent, and nobody is talking about them in what Professor Odinkalu talked about, narrative. So we need to deepen our understanding. So, and I want to align myself with the context of dialogue. And I think that there is no option. We need to dialogue. But there must be some sincerity of purpose in all these things. As Professor Odinkalu was saying, that you cannot initiate dialogue with a group of people who are not violent, who are violent and are killing. And you refuse that, you continue to demonize another group in another section of the country that is not violent at all. The military authorities even declared them as terrorists. They are looking for them anytime anything happens. Even the jailbreak and the violence in Imo State now is traced to this group. So what I think we should focus on, and the professor should talk to it, is how do we deal with what some writers have just called crisis entrepreneurs in Nigeria? It appears that we are talking that this thing is not military. It's not military solution. It's not military solution. It's a social problem. Absence of government, absence of space in Nigeria. But any moment from now, the federal government will return to the National Assembly with a supplementary budget on how to deal with insecurity in Nigeria. So people are now asking questions about some crisis entrepreneurs, that there are some people who are in government, who are in the military establishments, who do not want this crisis to end the way we are talking now, the way Sheikh Gumi, the way Senator Sheikh Sani, the way Professor Odinkalu have talked about it. We want this thing to end, because right now, while others are talking about scientific inventions and innovations in governance, in entrepreneurship, in making our country entrepreneurial nation, we are talking about ending banditry. It appears that banditry has become a big business. So how do we deal with crisis entrepreneurs? How do we do that? How do we deal with the federal government of Nigeria within the context of injustice, within the context of what Professor Odinkalu was talking about, dominance, about this, about that? We have at this moment a Fulani man in office and in power. Why is it that Sheikh Gumi, Senator Sheikh Sani, and some others, as Professor Yusuf was saying, they gathered Fulani leaders to be able to get all these bandits to a point of dialogue? why is it that the military authorities, and indeed the federal government, have not been enthusiastic about using these sources of initiating dialogue to end this banditry, to even reduce banditry? Why is the reluctance of the authorities, and it is written, we quote it every day in our newspaper, security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Why is it that these people are not interested in using these sources of dialogue to talk to these people? And we are talking about just budgeting for them at a time revenue is dwindling. As a time government itself is reluctant to reduce cost of governance, but we want to do supplementary budget for insecurity. Nobody can oppose that, but I think we need to go to the root of this matter. Crisis entrepreneurs within the system. We need to deal with them. And I think these are some of the questions we need to address. Yes, I agree it's a social problem, but we have a government in place. We cannot continue to discuss this thing without mentioning the role, like somebody asked in our dialogue section here now, all the governors of these northwest states, northeast states, what the people who, some of the people who have been governors of these states are in the Senate. They are in the legislature that one of the discussants talked about now. They are there. They are also, there is a way metaphorically Professor Odinkalu has addressed them too as bandits in the parliament, bandits in government. They are there. So we need to send some words to them. Maybe Prof, who will end this dialogue, needs to talk about them. And I think that we need to address this area. Let me just stop there. But to say that we need to develop communication, we need to deepen our understanding of all these issues beyond what I called sophistry in an article I wrote recently, what I call sophistry, banditry, and oratory, because there's so much oratory around this thing, there's so much sophistry without sincerity in the purpose of some of the people who are dealing with this dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Loja. I think we should give, let me see if Gloria is back. No, she's not. I think we should give Prof the opportunity to, I'm sure he's brimming to respond to some of the issues raised. For example, Professor Odinkalu raised the issue, when does dialogue stop and advocacy for terror start? And other questions. Prof, do you want to, Professor Yusuf, do you want to react to some of that? And then we also go to the question that Martin Oloja also raised. He also raised a number of issues. One of them is, what exactly is this injustice, historical occurrence that the bandits are talking about? Prof, you have the floor, sir.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for the contribution. Let me start with Professor Odinkalu. So, Prof, no government sent us to risk our lives to dialogue for peace. None. And all we are saying is that every leader in the Southwest should engage non-state actors there. Every leader in the Southeast should reach out to Nnamdi Kanu. Every leaders in the Northeast should engage Sheikh. We are doing our part in our region, the risk to our lives. Anything could have happened. So engage IPOP, engage Sheila, engage Igoho, engage Sheikh. It is the duty and responsibility of citizens. If we wait for government to do this, we will wait till kingdom come. So we're doing our part and we'll continue to do that. And it's not government that sent us to do that. It's not government that said, go and dialogue with Fulanis, go and, no, it is us. And I expect everybody in all the regions to play his part. And another thing, let us tell our story, because we know the story better. Just like I cannot give any narrative on Boko Haram, Igoho, or IPOC, because I do not know anything. My going to the forest has educated me more than I went in. For me, every day I get engaged in this, I am educated. I'm Fulani back and front, but 99.999% of these issues I know not. So if you do not know who you're fighting, you're wasting your time. So I see here in Abuja, we sit down, keep talking. From the government to the elites, we keep talking. Big grammar. They don't know us, we don't know them. I saw on our drive to all of these 5 states, you see the poverty in the rural areas. Governments are disconnected from realities of our people. It's not only in the north, it's all over the country. So government disconnected from realities of our people. Elites are in Abuja, IDPs themselves, disconnected from realities of our people. We went to see what we could do. We are doing our part, and I expect everybody to do his part. For anybody to say Sheikh Gumi is advocating for terror, that's uncharitable. Our heart, we know why we went there, why we put our lives at risk. And we are doing it and we'll continue to do it to see how we can reduce bloodletting. There's nothing to do with Fulani. We have suffered a lot more than anybody can tell. 1/3 of Kazina, our family members, Gumi's older brother has been kidnapped. So it is personal, it is not abstract for us. When we talk, we say we've been there, we saw it, and we've witnessed it. And this is what we are advocating. And this is what we are asking everybody to understand. This is part of our education to the world. Yes, Prof talked about Gumi saying this. And what I always say is that the messaging should not cloud the message. The message is crystal clear. We are advocates for peace in our region. Our region now that has gone out to the North Central, out there in the Northeast, and down to the Southwest. Banditry, this banditry is more difficult to handle than Boko Haram. Boko Haram is located just in the Northeast. These guys are small, no leadership, and they're all over the country. But they are a lot more open to peace because they listen to clerics. Sheikh Gumi could not have gone to talk to Sheikh. They would have killed him. And he's been saying bad words about him for going there. Any way you can bring peace, that we should do from every region. I cannot go to Imo and advocate and dialogue with IPOB. People like Professor Odinkalu should do that. Martin Oloja, wherever you're from, let's do it piece by piece and advocate for peace in our land. That's why we're there. Mr. Oloja, you talked about Fulanis bringing religion. No, that's not true. There was religion long before Sheikh Usman Yusuf came. So that's not knowing the history. And it's very good to be, we used to know all about history about all over the country. They don't teach history anymore. Houses were never conquered. No, that's not true. We've lived in peace between Houses and Fulanis for a very long time. We don't know what's happening. Now, Fulanis are fighting Hausa, Fulanis are fighting Tea, Fulani are fighting everybody. That's why we came in and we'll continue to do our part. Crisis entrepreneurs, they are everywhere. And God help this country. Our involvement, you, I, and everybody in this is the only way to do. Government must listen to us. Whatever government does without us is against us. We must all get involved. We are not against security agents. They are putting their lives on the line for us all across theaters of conflict in this country. But yes, when there are issues, we will speak them up. And I want everybody in all the geopolitical zone to do his part. We are doing our part. We are doing it for the good of this country. We are doing it for the good of our people.
Thank you very much, Professor Yusuf. We seriously, sincerely have run out of time, but it's such an important conversation that we are discussing here. And I'm sure that we all wouldn't mind to take a few more minutes to take questions from Nigerians. There are nearly 100 people on this call, and there are also people on all social media platforms. It just shows how important this is. Ajibola Amzat, the editor of the ICIR, will ask the question, but please, I'd like to ask one particular one because it's something that, and I'll put it in the mouth of Michael Atima, who says, this isn't war. This is simply a crime. We don't negotiate with armed robbers. Why are we negotiating with bandits? So the question is, why should, so at a point will come when some leaders in some place will say, look, armed robbers too are our children, let's negotiate with them. Professor Yusuf.
Yeah, so we need to see the difference between dialogue and negotiation. When you go sit down negotiation, I'll do this for you, do this for me. We are dialoguing just like you do everyday dialogue at home. We are going to see and understand these people that are causing this much havoc to us. Not only them, the vigilantes, the government, the traditional rulers, the clerics. So it's not that, oh, we are negotiating with criminals, or why do you negotiate? No, nobody sent us to negotiate. We went there to listen. And listen we did, and we'll continue to do. And this is not negotiation, this is not amnesty, this is understanding why we're doing this, preaching the word of God to them, and see those we can bring to the fold of peace. And we are making progress, I see that.
Now you mention it, before Ajibola asks those questions. We have heard Sheikh Gumi talk about amnesty. Is that the point of all this dialogue? Amnesty for the bandits? That we all agree
so what is good. So what is amnesty? If you look at the English dictionary for amnesty, it's English. It's not Hausa, Yoruba, Igbo, or Fulani. It's an English word. Amnesty, if you look at the dictionary, it's essentially an act of forgiveness for past crimes. We are not there. I tell you, if you do not reconcile communities, you can give all the amnesty you want, nothing will happen. Reconciliation is first. There has to be genuine reconciliation between all communities across the world, across the nation. The rehabilitation, what are you going to do with 13-year-old on drugs? What are you going to do? Kill him? Lock him up? These are child soldiers, for goodness sake. And wherever they are, we need to see what we can do, rehabilitate all communities. Sheikh Gumi is not an advocate for any group. He's an advocate for peace. Whichever way we can bring peace, that is the way. So we're not negotiating, say, oh, do this, do this. All the governors have been dialoguing and negotiating long before we came with this. And I have seen repentant bandits that have repented, and they're back to the fold. So Boko Haram have committed much worse than anybody. I'm not advocating for them. It is the person that is a criminal that you continue to talk with all over the world, all over the FARC rebels, been killing and maiming people. IRA have been bombing the place. So dialogue, for anybody to say you cannot dialogue, that person is not a student of history. There is no military solution for this, to this crisis. Yes, there's a role for the military, but there is no military solution. Dialogue is the way, one of many ways.
Thank you, Prof. Ajibola, do we have questions from our different public audiences, whether from Twitter, from Facebook, because also even from this forum? Ajibola, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. And there are a couple of questions, and many of them are for Professor Yusuf. And of course, people were trying to engage him also on the idea of dialogue that he suggested.
Go ahead.
I want to be sure that, dialogue seems to be a kind word for patronizing criminality. And what's the point of dialogue really when you realize that the criminal will suspend violence for some time and then come back to violence again? So what is the point of the dialogue? That is a question that one of the attendants asked here. And then Chidi Akubude also asked a question about, is there a way to hold the past governors of the northern state and other states to account for the period they spent in government, that perhaps the lack of investment in education contributed to the question of banditry and terrorism that we witness today? And then Solomon Azegua also is asking, what is the justification for taking law into your hands and asking for dialogue at the end of the day? So everything is revolving around the question of dialogue that Professor Usman Yusuf mentioned.
Let's take those questions first. Thank you, Ajibola. Prof.
Right. So Nigerians need to be very clear. Each time Sheikh Gumi goes in there, he says, there's nowhere in our scripture, there's nowhere in our upbringing that will support what they're doing. That we are not proud of them, we are not advocating for them, we are ashamed of them. I don't know how strong a condemnation can there be. He's not advocating for anybody, and nobody is. I won't be part of this team if we are advocating for them. They have committed a lot of crimes on our people. So this is personal we are talking about. We're not talking abstract from anywhere in this country. We feel it, we continue to feel it. But unless you sit down and have peace, you can shout all you want, you can throw all the bomb you want from the sky, you will never have peace. A third of my state, Katsina State, is under siege. People cannot go to school. Our children cannot go to school. People cannot go to their farms. So we feel it. We say this is the only way to bring peace because we have seen the way peace was brought in Zamfara, and that's the only way to go. Not military. Chibok girls, the ones that were brought out were not brought out by military force. The Dapchi girls, the ones that were brought out were not brought out by force. Kankara, kid, the same. Kagara, the same. So it's dialogue. I'm not talking about paying ransom or whatever. Whatever it takes to bring peace in this country, to reduce bloodshed, is the way to go. So anybody second guessing, oh, Sheikh Gumi does that, Sheikh Gumi's answer is to his Lord. And he knows what he's doing is the right thing. We are putting our lives at risk for the benefit of our people to bring peace to our land. And I urge everybody in this country to play his own part. Not to look too far, but to look inwards. All geopolitical zones of this country have security problem, all by local actors. So Southeast engage IPOB. Nnamdi Kanu is out there. We are engaging bandits, putting our life at risk, going into the forest with kids, child soldiers that are on drugs, carrying big guns into the forest. We've done that 5 states. Nobody asked us to do that. No government asked us to do that. So we're doing it for our people and for the good Lord that we know will appreciate, right? So blessed are the peacemakers. Isn't that what the scripture says? And ours says, wasul khair. The Quran says, peace is the best. So whichever way we can bring peace, that is the way we will do. We'll continue to do that. Thank you, Dayo.
Thank you, Prof. Ajibola, are there any other questions, or we go back to our panelists for a final round of?
There's a question for Mr. Martins Oloja. I think the question is from Aliyu Adamu Karefe. He wants to understand the crisis entrepreneur and how to eradicate it.
You know, what do you mean by crisis entrepreneur? So am I on now? Crisis entrepreneurship. Crisis entrepreneurship is not, it's a simple thing. It simply means that there are some people who have turned this crisis into business. They are benefiting from it, and anytime there is going to be a solution, those people will sabotage any effort in order to continue to benefit from it. They are in government, they are in the military establishment, and they are everywhere. And whatever anybody is doing to dialogue, to do anything, is nothing to them because they want it to continue. It is not a complicated matter at all. They are crisis entrepreneurs. They also try to buy arms. They negotiate how to buy arms, even from the black market, because they want that is how they can benefit. They can't do any manufacturing of goods that are essential. They just go into arms deal for government, for the military establishment. They just turn the crisis into business. That is what it means. And the only way it can be addressed is for the intelligence agencies to go into this one and advise government accordingly that, look, let us stop this crisis with some sincerity of purpose. And that is the only way you can stop crisis entrepreneurship in the circumstances.
Thank you very much. We are out of time, and I would want Professor Yusuf to, it looks like we need to come back on this conversation sometime. If we all agree on that after this, maybe we will be able to have part 2 of this conversation. Martin Zonoja, do you want to have a last word, the way forward? And then we come back to Professor Yusuf, who we will have his last word, and we'll go to Victoria Banas, the editor of the ICIR fact check operation, to have a vote of thanks. Thank you very much. Mr. Oloja.
2 quick points. And I think we need to look at what the Kano State governor has been doing. And they do not have so much problem in the capital of the North, in Kano. And there is something extraordinary that the Kano State governor has been doing, and he has been vocal about it, which is another context entirely, that in this 21st century, Prof, why should we be talking about migration, about innovation of roots, when the whole world that is doing this cattle rearing is into ranching, modern ranching, that you don't need these people to be moving from the north to the south? And even the Kano State governor has been talking about that they have enough plots of land to develop in a place like Kano, among other places in the north. Why are we not exploring modern ranching and just getting people to understand, that cattle rearing is big business, that government has no business investing so much when they are talking about Ruga here and there. But it leads to the fact that we need some proper understanding of what we are dealing with. At this juncture, we are talking about a unitary system of government. We need to do federalism in such a way that we invest according to our own ability to do what we want to do. So I feel that we should study what Kano is doing, what the Kano State governor has been talking about, and how to study the modern way of doing this cattle rearing without causing crisis, without hemispherization of the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps, Professor Yusuf, you can leave on this note. You talked about something that is even more scary than many of the things we know about banditry. The fact that in some parts of Sokoto or probably elsewhere, they are actually not local Fulanis, but Tuaregs from outside Nigeria. So how does even a state governor start to deal with an issue outside of his own jurisdiction? As a last word, sir.
Good. You see, Dio, all these borders are artificial. Artificial. I mean, people have lived between communities across in Katsina. I come from Katsina, Jibia and Niger Republic. They've lived and traded for a very long time. This is their lives. So the border is just like that. You don't see anything but that. And the criminals cross. It's because we don't have control of our borders. And there is criminality to be done here. So the authorities there in Niger are doing things better than we're doing here. But they are minor, they are small compared to the Fulanis of ours, not dropping from the sky. We have to own that. Yeah? Kanuris, Boko Haram Kanuris, IPOB are Igbos. These bandits, they are our Fulanis. I saw them with my eyes in the village, in the forest. So these Tuaregs are just few. The biggest problem are ours, and we need to find a way to take care of them. But I'm glad we're having this discussion, and it's a discussion we must continue to have. Each time we meet, we educate ourselves. But us telling our story, educate others about it. And it's good to have healthy discussion, agree to disagree, but the facts are here. We are in trouble, Nigeria, insecurity everywhere. Everybody needs to come on board. It is not ethnic. There may not be a Nigeria if insecurity is not sorted out before 2023. We need to take it very seriously. Thank you all very much for taking time to listen.
Thank you very much, Prof. We are also very excited that we have kickstarted this process. We are hoping that the dialogue will continue and many more people will create fora for, continuing to hold this conversation around not just the banditry and the kidnapping, but around all the security challenges that we face in the country. I'm happy that there are some points of convergence. We all agree that it is not force that will resolve this issue. Unfortunately, we don't have time. People are still raising their hands and asking questions, but we need to bring this to a close. Perhaps if it's possible, we'll have a second part of this. I'm suspecting that that might be possible or necessary. But like I said, we know we are agreed on some things, that there is need for dialogue of some sort. There is need for more communication between all stakeholders. The state governors need to get more involved. And we need to look at the narratives of, grievances, who is aggrieved and all that from all perspectives. All the inequality appears in different forms. The problem of racism and so on in the US and other parts of the world is all about inequality, about privilege. Some people enjoy privilege and they want to perpetuate that. The underprivileged also want to rise out of their position. And what happens with our bandits and Boko Haram is that they don't have the patience. They want to liberate themselves from their position of inequality. Perhaps that's one way of looking at it. So we also agree that, there is need for government to do more, because we recognize that when Prof spoke to me 3 weeks ago, one of the most scary things I heard is the fact that there is actually ungoverned territory from Sokoto to Oyo State. Those bandits can mobilize and travel from Sokoto to Oyo State, maybe in 12 hours. They don't need to come on the road. So they have their own governed territories where they have commanders and so on. So this is also about the inefficiency of government. The abdication, that's why Sheikh Gumi and other private citizens are going into the forests, because government has abandoned its responsibility to take care of the welfare of the people. So I thank you very much, Professor Yusuf, for joining us in this conversation. I thank you, our panelists. I can see that because maybe we overstepped the time limit we set for ourselves, others have gone on to other things. Martin Toloja is still with us. I thank you very much. Professor Odinkalu, I thank you for joining us and for the very insightful conversation we've had. Senator Sheikh Sani, we thank you for joining us. Gloria, I hope that the domestic or emergency issue you are dealing with, you are able to deal with it properly. All that have joined us, at the point I saw we had about 100 people on the conversation, just shows how important it is. If, like I said, if we can bring it back in part 2, we will ensure we do that.